Hello, BookTube. Welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited today because I have the Shawn D. Standfast with me. So welcome, Shawn.
Thank you for having me.
Happy belated birthday. Yesterday was Shawn's birthday, so thank you for fitting this live show in. Today we're going to talk about the Maltese Falcon by Dashiell Hammett. And I have to start this conversation off by asking Shawn how many times he's read this book and what his just overall thoughts are about it.
I'm pretty sure this is the fifth time that I've read it, and it won't be the last. My thoughts are I really, really enjoy it. I like the ambiguity in it, that there's no clear hero, no clear good guy or good woman. And yeah, it's just, and it's one of the earlier ones too. And Dashiell Hammett wrote other novels that I love too. The Thin Man is just amazing as well, and the films. So I hope we get to the film as well.
Well, I can tell you guys we'll definitely get to the film because Shawn and I were talking before we went live, and he has a lot of really neat stories related to the film. So we'll definitely work some of that in here. Do want to say hey to a couple people in the chat. Steven, I do love my nachos, but sorry I did not bring any for the for the live show. Mark, good to see you. It is very lovely weather here, Mark. And it will be in the 80s this week, so very excited about that. Hello, Brad. Good to see you again. And Pauline, hello. Good to see you. And of course, Pauline and Mark are in the book club as well. So, if you guys want to chime in as we're talking about this, please feel free. But I guess we'll start off with just a little background on the story here for anyone watching this later. The Maltese Falcon, I believe this is kind of seen as the first true kind of detective noir fiction, this hard-boiled detective sort of story. Is that your understanding as well, Shawn?
Well, it's one of the first. I think in the early 20s, sort of Dashiell Hammett and then Raymond Chandler were the ones I think that sort of developed it. So yeah,
Yeah.
so it's near one of the earlier ones.
Yeah. So we follow this main character, Sam Spade. He is a detective in San Francisco, and he finds himself investigating this case. He's a PI. So this woman approaches him to find her sister, who has run off with this man, and she wants to, of course, bring her sister back home to her parents. But it's not as it seems, and apparently there is a dingus, as Sam Spade will call it, a piece of property, a Maltese Falcon that is supposed to be encrusted with all of these riches, and it's worth a ton of money. And this young lady and a cast of characters are all trying to get to it. So Sam Spade is trying to kind of parse together what is going on here, and that is the basis of the book. So I guess we'll start, Shawn, with our main character, Sam Spade. So what do you think of Spade as a detective?
He's a good detective because he's as bent as the criminals. So he's very good at what he does. He understands the motivations and why people do it. He's not a nice character. He's all out for himself from the get go.
Yeah, I like him as a detective too, because I feel like you're right. He is not necessarily this altruistic sort of detective, and so you hire a thief to catch a thief. You know what I mean? Like he is good at figuring out people's motivations and kind of giving them enough rope to hang themselves. You know, and it's interesting to see it all play out and how he plays all the angles. So
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that.
And he also knows how the police work and what will satisfy the police just enough that if he can hold something back that is beneficial for him, then he will. And he'll construct things in a certain way as well to make sure he gets off on it, that he comes out in the clean, and the police are left there going, how did he do that?
Yeah, I like how he used the police as well. I feel like he used the threat of himself possibly being incriminated or arrested for the crimes, the murder of his partner, which is the initial crime, um, and then later George Thursby. I feel like he uses that to kind of relate to the other criminals in the story, like, hey, we have to kind of work together and work a little bit faster than the police. I'm working an angle here too, but we're all kind of on the same page as far as that goes, keeping the police none the wiser and out of the um, loop.
And one thing with the hard boiled detective fiction too that was starting and then goes into the film noir films later, is there is an upset of the sexual tension and everything between men and women, where you either have men are shown as very weak and women are dominant, and it just changes the whole uh, dynamic up. And also too, you still have this masculinity thing where women are just falling over Sam Spade. they just they're just and that happens a lot in this kind of fiction. And it appears to be very sexist, and it is in many ways, but some of these women just throw it right back at him. They do the same thing. Like even his secretary, she adores him clearly, but she doesn't fall at his feet in many ways. She stands up to him as well, even though she'll probably do anything for him. But she's her own person. And then we got Bridget, who's another piece of work for many reasons.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that relationship between the secretary, Effie, and Sam Spade. It was very, yeah, like you said, they could kind of talk smack to each other, and she gets away with it. I feel like, sorry for the road noise, guys. I feel like she has earned his respect. I feel like she's one of the only characters in the book that is truly loyal.
Yeah.
Like you said, she is very loyal to Spade. She will do anything he asks. She doesn't ask questions. You know, and I feel like they had almost a brother sister sort of vibe going on. But then there were other times where there was a little bit, just a touch, I felt like, of maybe some sexual tension there. But I feel like, to Spade, maybe she was the one person who was kind of off limits. She was kind of sacred in a sense, in that, he recognizes what he has in her. He has this very loyal partner. I mean, she's really, you know, the glue in a lot of these scenarios, kind of, piecing things together and getting the parts kind of moving. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed that relationship.
It's interesting at times because he asks her what your intuition is, your feminine intuition, especially about Bridget. And because he which she tells him goes against his feelings of what he has for her. So he goes with her, but then he realizes he was right and
Yeah,
she was actually wrong,
yeah,
which is an interesting thing. And also too, the narrator, the way it's always described to her, she has a boyish face as well. Like she's not sexualized like the other characters. Like Iva, I think it is, Archer's, is it Archer? Yeah, his partner's ex, not
Yeah.
ex, and Bridget. Like they are very sexual characters, but Effie isn't for some reason, and you've got, but then you've got the opposite side of you got Joel Cairo, who's also very feminine,
Yeah.
because that's pretty clear in the book. And this is the 20s, you got to remember. He is clearly a homosexual character. And there's no if, buts, or maybes about it. And there's so many things that they talk about that. And possibly the other character, the boy, Wood. I think it's Wood, isn't it? Yeah. Uh,
Um, Gosh, what was that character's name, guys, in the chat?
I can't remember. I think it was Wood, I think.
Kevin said she seemed jealous of Spade when he was into Miles's wife. Yeah, I think some of that, Kevin, was a little bit, of that kind of tension that I talked about, but also I think it was protectiveness over Spade, because I think she sees what a toxic situation that is. That Spade has had this long-term affair with his partner's wife, and she keeps coming around the office, and now that Archer has been killed, she's really putting Spade at jeopardy by showing up, because the police are going to start connecting these dots. They're going to find out about this affair, and of course, then it's going to point right to Spade.
Yeah, and you sort of think that because it's his partner and he's should it's kind, and I'm sure at the time it must have been a bit shocking in some ways that it's his partner, he's having an affair with his partner's wife, and that's openly in the book that these are the things that are not in polite society, but it's clear he didn't like his partner, and it begs the question, like, how did they even become partners? Like, it seems like they haven't been partners for long, because he says something about a year or something, that he noticed that at the beginning he noticed there was something wrong. So he's actually happy, I think, that Archer's out of the picture now, because immediately the next day he tells Effie to change the signs. Spade. It's now Sam Spade. Not Archer and Spade, or whichever it was.
Yeah, I think Kevin's right. Wilbur.
Wilbur. That's it.
Wilbur.
Yeah, Wilbur.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um.
Elijah Wood. That's something. Elijah Wood Jr. I'm thinking of the actor's name
Uh,
on the film. Yeah.
yeah. What was interesting about that, Shawn? Like you said, I really wanted the backstory on Archer, and and I don't remember now. I'm getting the film and the book kind of, because I watched the film right after. I don't remember if it was in the book or the film, but even the police made mention of the fact that Miles was not the most well liked person, and he definitely had some issues. And, one thing that was alluded to in the book was the fact that he was much like Sam Spade, in that he had dalliances with all of these women. And we know that comes into play with Miss O'Shaughnessy. That's what ends up putting him at risk there. So you wonder you know, what else with this character. I just don't understand why he was um so disliked. We didn't see him very much, because he dies pretty much as soon as he's introduced. He's murdered. So we don't really get a lot of insight into that character. But did you have any insight into him, or?
No, not much more than that, because there's not a lot in the book. Like, he's like Sam Spade, as you say, I think they're similar, but Sam Spade is smarter. He's
Yeah.
slicker. He's smoother. He knows enough to cover up. Like, everything Sam Spade does, whatever the outcome is, if it doesn't come out the way he wants it, he's still going to come off smelling like roses, because he set everything up that it could go either way. And it's really hard to then say that you're lying or that's not what happened, because everything is set up that way. But Archer is like, he didn't treat Iva, his wife, very well. He wanted a divorce and everything too. And I think that was known. And they're like, and I think the police, there might be, I think you can infer that probably there's probably he does have a record of some sort, maybe for domestic or something, or people calling like that. You could suspect that. But somebody I think has written. Well, there's been a few novels written around this, and I think somebody has written a novel about Archer. I've never read it. I've only seen it, but I think somebody has, and that could be interesting to see what their take is.
Very interesting. One of the things, since we're talking about the very beginning of the book, one of the things that struck me was the description of Sam Spade. And it's very different than, the Humphrey Bogart character, or how Bogart looks, but it was really a characterization of what he was like. It described him as very angular, like his face had all of these like V characteristics, kind of very harsh and discerning. And the part that really got me was, I think the author said he was a blonde-haired Satan. Do you remember that part?
Yeah, well, that was the second film, I think,
Yeah.
Satan Meet Lady, which was the comedy version of Maltese Falcon. If you could, with Betty Davis, if you can picture that.
Yeah, that just kind of threw me for a little bit of a loop. Um, but I think definitely speaks to his character because, obviously, just historically, you associate blonde with like angelic, and I think that throughout the book we see, glimpses of Spade being a good guy, a goodish guy, we'll say. But what do you think I know because we talked about this before we got on, but what do you think his primary motivations are? What do you think makes him tick?
It's everything for himself. It's for him to get ahead. He does everything for that, and it's that's why I say, like, he sets things up that he wants to get ahead. He wants to make the big break, and he doesn't care really if it's legal or not, as long as he can get away with it scot free. But if he can't, then he's not willing to pay the price. He's not willing to pay the price of failure, and which means jail. So he makes sure that somebody else is the fall guy or fall woman, whichever it is. He's very duplicitous.
Duplicitous.
Yeah, duplicitous. And
Yeah.
so is Bridge. Everybody is, like, Joel Cairo is less so, but definitely Gutman is definitely, because he's trying to play all angles, and even the backs. See, this is the thing, we haven't even got to the backstory of the Falcon and everything, which is really, really interesting. And I think I looked into some of that one time, and I think there's some historical truth to it with the Templars. I think, but I
Okay.
don't know how much. But it's this whole backstory that when Gutman tells of them going all across Europe, and everywhere to find this and track this down over this, where it went over the centuries, and then them in Constantinople, getting it, and her, Joel Cairo, and Bridget. It's a huge adventure story that is told in a couple pages. It's like, I wish Dashiell Hammett did what Victor Hugo did and went 300 pages telling that story and then come back to San Francisco, because but it opens up so much. It's so much adventure with that.
Yeah, I agree. I felt like the description of that was very rushed and hurried, and I read it a couple of times. And I would have loved to have seen, like you said, that play out, and to really see how these characters come together, because it is a very interesting group that we have here with, Miss O'Shaughnessy and Cairo and Gutman. Um, what, I guess, of those characters, which character was your favorite?
In the book, I guess it's hard to say. They all equally are fascinating because Joel Cairo is just fascinating the way he is because he in some ways like he's portrayed as like almost a mummy's boy in a sense and very feminine, but he's got a nasty streak to him as well, you know. And Gutman, I would probably say Gutman is the best because he's the one that has the he's been searching for this thing for most of his life, I think, and it's such a passion for him, and nothing is going to stand in the way. And he'll use people that he doesn't like, for instance, Joel Cairo and Bridget. You know, he'll use those to try to get, but it gets away from him a lot, though. That's the thing. But yeah, I think it would probably be Gutman. But something I just wanted to say too about you're saying about the way that characters are, that the way they describe, and that with Hard Boiled, it sort of turns your thoughts of things on its end, and that's like the stereotypical view of men, women, and situations. It turns it on its side or just flips it completely, because you'd think that again with him it should be loyalty because it's his partner, but there isn't.
Yeah.
There isn't, you know. And that's sort of, and every time there's that relationship is flipped on its side or its end, I think. But anyway, that's sort of going back.
And spoiler alert here. So if you haven't read the book, seen the film, just dip out for a second. Um, with having Bridget O'Shaughnessy being the murderer of his partner, I think that's kind of the ultimate, what you said there, flipping everything on end, because she's playing this part of this damsel in distress, right? But Spade knows she's dangerous. I mean, he knows from the beginning she's not what she appears to be. And I think, I think you're right that he kind of gives her a little bit of a benefit of the doubt because of Effie kind of vouching for her, like, oh yeah, I think she's good people, And do you think at the end of the day that Spade was in love with Bridget?
In some ways, yeah, because I think because she's very much like him, but because he loves himself more than anything else, he realizes that it would be death to him to be in a relationship, or like for him to pursue something like that. I think because yeah, he just sees that she's very, and that's how I think he can see so much into her, is because she's so much like him, but for different reasons. Like because we get actually we get some glimpses of why she's like she is now, but we don't really get that too much about uh, Spade, other than his story that he tells her about this guy who all of a sudden, you know, and I think that says something. Is like he tells her the story out of the blue about this guy who's going to work or something like that, and something
Flitcraft.
falls.
His name was Flitcraft.
Yeah, yeah, and he
Yep.
just, he survived, and he should have, probably been dead. So he just figures he's just going to change his life and go somewhere else. And then he does change his life for a little bit, but then he goes back into the same life, but with a different wife, different family, different job, but it's the same life. And I think that says a lot for Spade, because he doesn't he wants out of that loop, I think.
Yeah.
And but will Bridget O'Shaughnessy do that? I think he realizes no, because it ends with, I'm not going to walk in the shoes of the dead people that follow you, or the dead men that follow you, because she uses the men to get her way, and then they're discarded. Either she discards them or they die for her, because they really believe that she's in love with them and they're in love with her. And she tries that on Spade, but it doesn't work. She does go to bed with him. She offers her body. She says, like for the fee to get the Maltese Falcon. And it's like to him, it's clear that he can get that kind of thing everywhere. Like he can just call up Arch's widow. He doesn't need somebody. He doesn't really need her. She needs him, and she tries to make it so the men need her.
Yeah, I really liked the Flipcraft story as well. I do feel like he was trying to tell her something, you know. And I think that was at the point in the story where he's fixing them breakfast. They've been up all night. He's basically been trying to get the straight story from her, and they just keep going around in circles, and they're really getting nowhere. And like you said, this person, he has this big revelation because he almost gets killed, and then he ends up right back where he was. And I think he sees that pattern in her life.
Yeah.
And I think I saw that pattern in her life too, because, and some people in the group did disagree, but I did pick up on the fact that I think she has been abused. She's been mistreated. Something has happened in her past, I think, that has made her this way, or contributed to her being this way. So, and I think we all kind of wanted the backstory of her and a lot of these characters, because this book is written in third person narration, so we never get an insight into what any of these characters think. So I think that's kind of the beauty of this book,
Yeah.
though, Shawn. I think that's what you said at the beginning, kind of how ambiguous it is. You're getting the tip of the iceberg, and it's just enough to whet your taste buds, and you kind of want more. You really want to see what makes all of these characters tick.
Yeah, and then you make it like the reader can fill in with whatever they want. So, but I think that there, like with the Bridget O'Shaughnessy, there are some things that he hints very clearly that she was badly abused in many ways, because like there's the scene where Sam asks her something, are you in danger, or there's something of that effect, and she says no, just with my life. And it's just, that's what she fears, that's the worst thing that can happen. And I think that's referring to a fate worse than death, which is rape. So if she thinks that death is worse than that, she's experienced it. So, and I think that's a hint, rather than saying that she was abused or raped. I think that's pretty clear that she was. So, and then she's fought back the only way she can. She
Yeah.
either, and but she's become a horrible person, and just sees everybody as to help her to get to her own ends, and use them and then discard them once they're done.
And I think the scene that really gave it away for me was the scene in the bathroom
Yeah.
when Spade ends up doing a strip search of Bridget because $1,000 is missing from Gutman's money that he had given to Spade. And she tells him in no uncertain terms, like, this is it. Like, if you make me do this, if you humiliate me in this way, there's no coming back from this. And I really like that scene because I could feel that it was a turning point for both characters. And I think there was a bit of recognition with both of the characters there, that they were dealing with someone who was just as disturbed as themselves,
Yeah.
And even though I think, and for me, I do think that there was some sort of love there, whatever that looks like for people that really have no sense of loyalty,
Well,
whatever
dysfunctional,
that
I guess. They're both
dysfunctional.
dysfunctional. Yeah.
Yeah, very dysfunctional, but I do think there was some sort of affection there. And so that scene to me was kind of upsetting. It was kind of telling. It was a really big scene for the characters. And of course, we talked about this. They can't put that in the film, right? It's too salacious. But that was one of the best scenes in my opinion.
And the other thing was too, because it shows Sam Spade as well in another way. There was two possibilities what happened to this bill. the most obvious was that she took it. So he had to find out 100%. And he just cut to the chase. Like that's even Gutman says, I like the cut of your jib sort of type thing, because he just goes right to the heart of the thing. So he wanted to find out. And once he knew that, then he knows exactly what happened to it. Then he attacks, you know, and this is how he sort of works. But that also too. And I think he did have love, but like I say, because she's so much like him. That's the thing. And it's like, the like it's not opposites attract. It's in this case, it's very similar that they saw each other. Uh, but yeah, I just find it a fascinating book because of all this. And it's like I say, the ambiguity, I can't say the duplicity. Um, it's just amazing because you read it, and every time you read it, like I've read it 5 times, every time I see something a little different, because there's little things that are in there that then I'm connecting to something else. And I think that's why it's even though it's written for a pulp, I think there's a lot of craft to this. And if it isn't, he just hit on amazingly by accident, that he just threw so much stuff together and left so much stuff out. But it's what he left out and what he put in that I can't believe that was accidental. I really can't. And this is a pulp. It was done in over 5 I think 5 issues in the Black Mass from 1929 to 1940, or no, 1929 to 1930, and it immediately was bought for the film, the first film in 1931.
I've got a squirrel stalking me out here, Shawn. Squirrels make a ton of noise. You think it was a bear out here, but just a squirrel. No worries. Yeah, it's really fascinating how this book is written. You did comment though in the chat about the romance or lack thereof. That was pretty funny.
The which? Sorry.
The romance or lack thereof in the book, how that was written.
Yeah,
so definitely not a romance author in any stretch.
But there is some romance in it, because the whole idea of them searching for it's romance in a different way.
Yeah.
Searching for the Falcon, especially Gutman. But that's the thing. It's like in some ways I almost wanted the book to end, the story to end at the point where Gutman and Cairo decide that they're going to go back and search for it again. But they don't, because they get caught. But I sort of wish that's where it was. I wish that it did that. And so they're out there looking for it still.
Yeah. That would have been, I think, that would have been a very romantic kind of, ending there. Very adventurous. I like that. We should.
But it doesn't make it for Spade though so much, because he would still be in trouble. So he had to do that so he could get off scot-free.
It is usually the birds, Mark, but I went through some immersion therapy with the birds in Key West, because they just roam free. They have like all these chickens and roosters and everything. So when I was down there, I'm not going to say I conquered it totally, but almost. I had to, because it was just like I said, it was immersion down there. Yeah, but I like that ending. And what did you think of how it ended, though? Were you satisfied? Were you?
Yeah,
you said you would rather have had Gutman and Cairo go off, but
I think it's satisfying because it proves, well, to me, the point about Spade. Like, he gives her up as well. So, because he can't do anything else because of his character. And it's not that he loves her so much that he's willing to sacrifice. Like, he clearly says, I'm not sacrificing myself for you.
I won't be the sap. Yeah.
And so that it's full circle, for he's back exactly where the Flit, what's it, the other character's name?
Flitcraft. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it was like
he's
George
right back.
Flitcraft.
Yeah, he's right back at the at where he was. You know, it's the same thing. He tried to he tried to make things different, but he's gone back into this. But this was a conscious choice that he made to do this. Flitcraft, it wasn't conscious. It just he fell back into that life.
Well, you could also say the opposite though, Shawn, because for me, it made me question his motivations. Like I was thinking along your lines the whole book that, you know, he's in it for him. He really kind of enjoys watching these people squirm, and he really loves the game. He loves to play the game. I could just see that with a lot of the back and forth he had with Gutman. It just seemed like he was having too much fun, you know. um, but when he turns her over, I don't know, it made me question if, you know, he did have some sense of right and wrong and loyalty and, you know, the lines that you should not cross. And I think the lines that he would delineate in the sand would be a lot different than probably what most, you know, moral people would put out there. But it made me question that because, you know, he did not like his partner, but he does see it through to the end. He does find out who murdered his partner. He does find out who murdered George Thursby. He does, you know, make sure that those people are brought to justice. So for me, it was still just as ambiguous. I mean, I still had all these questions about that character.
Yeah, well, that's what I think. That's what I mean. It is ambiguous. To me, it works in my way, but then I could see it working in the other way too, and that's the way
Yeah.
it's written. That's the way it's written because you could see it in both ways. And if you read the book in my way, you'll see everything that points to that. You read the book with your
Yeah.
thoughts, right from the beginning, you'll see all these little things of chivalry, all these things that could be chivalry, and honor. But again, you got to question yourself: is it because in the end he's trying to save himself? Like that's what I'm sort of saying. But there might be that little bit in there that he sets it up that, you know, if it doesn't fall the way he wants it, then there is going to be some honor that he'll that part of honor in him might be satisfied. But if he got get away with it, get away honor, just
Yeah.
push that aside. He's happy to push that aside. But then when it isn't, then it might come out, and that's the beauty, I think, the way it's written.
So, what did you think about the setting? What did you think
I
about the
liked
San Francisco and the?
Yeah, I liked it because it's different, and I think it was different for the time because most of the time, it's usually New York, New York or L.A. is the one. San Francisco, I don't know if at this time there was too many that were in San Francisco, and it's a different feel than, because it doesn't seem as claustrophobic, for the setting as even LA would, but LA is less so, I think. But definitely New York. I always feel there's when they're set in New York, it's claustrophobic. It's a very very, like, things are too close to each other, and there he has to travel. They travel out somewhere, and they go to different places. Um, yeah, and it's because how does he, like, he gets the taxi and he goes, to the outskirts, and it seems like he's, like, traveling to another town or something like that, but it's just the outskirts, I think, of San Francisco, but because it's sprawling, I think so. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like the setting as well, and I think in one of the early chapters they have a really great description of him in his apartment. He's being woke up in the middle of the night. I think it's when they're coming to tell him that Miles has been murdered. His window's open, so he has kind of some like misty air coming through the window, and he can hear the foghorn from Alcatraz. And, for me, that is just so atmospheric. I mean, there's a whole kind of mystique around Alcatraz, I think, too. And of course, its role in, crime history and this idea of justice, and kind of being far removed from society. And yeah, it still has all the city vibes, all of the, not quite like you said, claustrophobic like New York, but you still have businesses and restaurants and movie theaters that are open all hours of the night. So, you still get that kind of seedy sort of element to it. But yeah, I liked San Francisco. There was a whole different kind of vibe to it. So yeah, really like that.
And one thing about in the same scene in his apartment, there's one book in there, and it's like the what is it, the criminal cases of America.
Yeah.
That's a real book, actually.
Nice.
I
Do
wanted
you
to get
have that, Shawn?
no, I've wanted to get it because
You're telling me in all those books back there, you don't have this one too?
no, because it's something that I've wanted, and I've only seen a few copies, and they're very expensive. So, and I haven't looked recently, but I had seen a few copies a long time ago. Yeah, Charlie Chan, and again, like Mark, it does have a similar kind of. It's like more open. It seems like there's, you don't have skyscrapers, like you're not just, in little rooms and that. It just there's a different feel for some reason, and I don't know if it's consciously how the writers do it, or it's just a natural thing because you're describing San Francisco. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe the setting kind of drives the book there a little bit. Yeah. I do want to talk a bit about the film because I know you've seen it a bunch. You didn't get a chance to rewatch it again this go round, but I rewatched it when I finished, and reading the book gave me a whole new appreciation for the film. There were all sorts of little things in the film that I kind of picked out that I had never even noticed or given second thought to before. One of the things that stuck out to me was the Joel Cairo character. And, Peter Lorre is a fantastic actor. I've always loved him as an actor, but he was phenomenal. And I never saw him as a gay character before. I mean, maybe I'm just a bit dense on this. I don't know, but I definitely saw that he was a bit, effeminate. He was a bit different from the other characters, but I kind of saw it more as he was a little more sophisticated than the other characters. Prior to reading this book, I just saw him as a cool cat. And maybe that's just a little bias on my part because I think the actor himself is pretty neat. That I was kind of like, biased in that, but the way he dresses and kind of his attention to some of those details with his clothing, and kind of he's always kind of concerned with how he looks. And the perfume I never noticed before. In the film, Bogart is going through Joel Cairo's things, and he pulls out his handkerchief and he smells it, and he kind of makes a face. And Effie made mention that he smelled like, what was it? What did? Wasn't gardenias. I think it was gardenias. Yeah. There's a guy out here, he smells like gardenias, and I never noticed that before. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I not see this? Like, how did I not see this? But that was kind of cool. It was almost like finding little Easter eggs, in the film that I never picked up on before. But what are your thoughts on the film? What are some of your favorite scenes in that?
I think the favorite scenes are with Joel Cairo and Gutman, but you're right. Peter Lorre is just fabulous. This little business that he's always doing, even when he's not on the screen, like when they're in the apartment with Spade near the end. There's a scene. I think Bridget is on the right. He's in the background in a chair. Gutman's in the front on a chair. Gutman's doing his acting, talking his thing. But if you watch Peter Lorre, he's doing all sorts of little business that is just it's like he's trying to almost upstage Sydney Greenstreet. It's just there's all these little things like that. His eye movements are just so fantastic, and it just and especially Sydney Greenstreet, the way he tells the story and his laugh, and it's sort of like, he wants things a certain way, but then it's like when it doesn't happen, huh, okay, well, let's do something else, and he's willing to roll with things as much as possible. And it really worked, and that's the way it was in the character, and he really worked in the film for me. And Mary Astor, I thought, was really good, except I think they toned her down a little bit. They made her a little more the victim, I think, in the film than in the book. She is more of the the femme fatale in the book, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I felt like she was a little bit too schoolgirlish, a little bit too innocent, and her entrance in the book, I mean, yeah, she's definitely playing the part of the victim, but just kind of her look and all that didn't fit. And Spade picks up on that really quickly. But yeah, you're right. In the film, she was a bit too demure, kind of in the beginning, and I don't know if that was intentional or not. But yeah, the things you were saying about Peter Lorre, and I don't know. I think that era of film, it was kind of unusual for that to be happening. Like, I think, like, you played your part, and then you kind of, you were still in character, but you didn't really detract at all or do anything that would draw the audience's attention to you, and it wasn't necessarily your scene. And of course, now I think it is the status quo to, continue acting, even when you're not the speaking role at that point. So yeah, definitely something that I watched out for.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's just amazing. Anything he's in is worth. Well, same as the Sydney Greenstreet, and the thing I was saying before we went live, Sydney Greenstreet. This was his first acting role on film. He was 61 years old, I think, because he was born in 1880, I think it was. So he would have been 61 when this, because it was released in late
1941, I think.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it was filmed over a 6-week period in June and July, the previous June and July in 41. So it was done very, very quickly. John Huston is the one who wrote the script from the book, and he directed it, and it's his directorial debut as well. And I don't know how all the actors were picked, but it's like Bogart. I never really think of Bogart as a great actor. He's not a great actor, but the parts that he usually gets are perfect for him. So it works. Like, he doesn't have to be a great actor. He can't, like, I don't think he can do certain things, but the parts that he does, and he fit the part of Sam Spade. He doesn't look like him. It doesn't look like him at all.
Yeah.
No shape or at all. But like Sydney Greenstreet, yeah, you can believe he's like that. You can believe Peter Lorre. You can believe Mary Astor as Bridget, and Effie. I think, I can't remember, or was she too pretty? I think for the boyish look. I can't remember now.
It's funny because in the film, that's something that I thought. I thought Effie's character in the film was a attractive woman. I mean, and she was kind of smartly dressed, and she was really cute. And I didn't think there was enough of a difference there in the film between her character and Miss O'Shaughnessy, because in the book, like you said, she's supposed to be very boyish, and Miss O'Shaughnessy is supposed to be this knockout, And of course, I think some of that, may have looked different if it was in color, because in the book, O'Shaughnessy is supposed to have this red hair, and I'm sure that kind of would make a bit of a statement. but yeah, to me, I never really saw a big difference between the two characters there.
Like Mary Astor was very um what's the word, very um I can't think of the word. It's like she's very proper, not proper, but very sort of statuesque, and just this sort of, very very extremely feminine, and her movements and everything like that.
Yeah.
And so that's and she was an actress that's like that. Her whole sort of persona, what was this kind of thing. And that's where I thought, yeah, the Effie wasn't uh supposed to be quite like that. She wasn't, had this feminine sex appeal, you know and yeah, that's the other thing. Like, Bridget is supposed to ooze this sexuality as well. you know I'm not 100% sure it worked in the film,
Yeah.
but it was there. And the other thing that's interesting, like, just to go back, like 1931 was the first film with um what is it? I wrote it down. The actor's name that played Sam Spade, and to me, I remember seeing it, and it didn't work. Um, I can't remember the guy's name. Uh, but anyway, and they wanted to re-release it in, I think, around the mid 30s, but the Hayes office found it too lewd. I just don't quite remember that. I really want to see it again, but I don't have it, and I haven't seen it in a long time. But then they apparently made this other one that I didn't see, Satan Meets a Lady, with Betty Davis as Bridget O'Shaughnessy. And then they thought it was stupid. Like, Warner Brothers didn't even back this film that much. It cost like $318,000, I think. Very low budget for the time to make the whole film, and they didn't even push it or anything like that. But it got amazingly good reviews once it was out. Yeah, Ricardo Cortez, that's it. Yeah. um, like, really really good reviews, and they were saying that the directorial was great, and like, I think John Huston said why he wanted to do it was because nobody had done it correctly yet. He just thought going back to the book would do it. And there's another interesting thing with regard. Well, sorry, I'll get to Mary Astor in a second. But the good story of the Sidney Greenstreet was, like I say, he didn't start acting until much later. I think he went out east to be to grow tea or something like that, but that fell through. He became a manager, I think, of a brewery, and he was bored apparently, and he he took acting lessons. So he started acting a little bit on stage, and then, yeah, and then 1941 he made his film debut, which is
It's
just
never
amazing.
too late. Never too late, guys.
And Mary Astor is kind of interesting because Bridget O'Shaughnessy had a abusive life that is pretty clear in the book. Mary Astor had a weird life. She started acting into silent films and doing modeling. She was controlled, I think, by her parents and her father, and abused in some way. I don't know the full details. And it wasn't until she was, I think, 19 or 20 that she sort of escaped this. They kept all her money as well. She couldn't even have friends, I don't think. So her way out, I think, was to marry someone, and then it was, like, I think, an abusive relationship there as well. She did have at least one child or two children at the time, and in the mid 30s she wanted a divorce, but her husband found her diary of all her sexual dalliances with other men and possibly women, and she wrote details of what they did. And he said, well, and they would bring this out public if she went to court for this, and it would destroy her career and she wouldn't get the children. So she said, screw you, basically, and went to court. And the judge finally said they weren't going to put the diary into court, so she won. She got most of custody of her children. but they did. Somebody did leak. Well, they first leaked fake stuff about the diary, and then they leaked actual stuff about the diary. But it didn't destroy her career, which was really strange. Like in the 30s, because usually stuff like that would have destroyed careers. It could even destroy careers today. But
Yeah.
but
You know, maybe because of the false leak, the initial false leak,
yeah.
that may have helped her cause. You know what I mean? Because when the legitimate secrets were then revealed, people may have just thought, well, you know, we can't really believe that.
Yeah, and she went on to having a really good career, and she was a good actress. She was a very good actress, and she wrote fiction as well. She wrote fiction, and she wrote a memoir, at least one memoir in the late 50s that sold like hotcakes because of that. I think she called it maybe the Purple Diary, I think, or something like that. But by then it was locked away, this diary, and I think she got the okay, or because I think it was held for evidence or something, but it was destroyed. It was thrown into a furnace apparently, because otherwise that would have been a sensational selling thing for that to be published, and it would be published today for sure. But yeah, anyway,
Absolutely.
that's sort of a little tidbits. Oh, the other thing is, you remember I said it was 319,000, or no, sorry, 381,000 was the budget for the film. In 1994 or 1995, one of the statues that were used as a prop sold for 398,500. So it sold for many times more than the film cost to make.
It's the stuff dreams are made of, Shawn.
Yeah. And it's just a plastic, and you can buy somebody as recently, or there's a bunch of them. I think they're all made in China. I don't know how quality they are, but you can buy like 16-inch figures, and I think that they're new, because you could never get those like 10 years ago. I think in the last few years you can go on eBay or Amazon, I think, and you can buy a Maltese Falcon.
Very cool. I think you need one for your shelves.
Yes, it would be great to have them here.
um, yeah, and I think Leonardo DiCaprio actually owns one of the statuettes from
Oh,
the
does he?
film.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, I came across that. I was looking up something when I was either reading the book or watching the film, and that just happened to pop up. I didn't click on it, but so I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
Um,
it's going to be worth something, that's for sure, because it's an iconic film. But it's like I this is one of the few studies of it. It's called the Maltese Falcon. It's a Rutgers Films in print. It's got the script in here as well, and like the editor says, it's never really gotten, for some reason, a lot of attention, the film. And it's later ones that are, because this is not quite film noir yet, but the French did call it film noir in 1946, I think, when it premiered in France. But the ones that they really talk about as film noir is stuff like Double Indemnity and things like that. But there's other proto ones, but this definitely has that feel, because it's black. It's like there's no really good people in it. That's the thing, and it's got that twist of things.
Speaking of Double Indemnity, I have that book. Have you read it?
Yeah,
Of course you have. I was going to say, you want to read it with me, Shawn, but you've already read it. I don't want to make you read something else you've already
I'd like to actually read it again,
read.
because well, okay, maybe I shouldn't spoil this, but all I'll say is that the writer of the book says that Raymond Chandler, who did the screenplay, did a better ending than he
Oh,
did,
okay.
and
Okay.
he did.
Okay. Because I've seen the film a long time ago, and I did get the film and the book for Christmas, and I haven't read it yet. So if I get around to that, I might shoot you a message just so we can chat about it, because
Yeah,
yeah,
it's really short. It's
it's
really
a
short.
it was a really short one. So
Yeah, I liked it, but I yeah, it's good. I'd like to read it again. That's the thing. I've only read it once, but that's really good too, because her character, Barbara Stanwyck's character, is a much like, in some ways, but a neophyte Bridget O'Shaughnessy.
And Mark says Double Indemnity is good, but the
Yeah,
Postman always rings twice is better. Yeah, that's a great. I've seen the film. I haven't.
yeah. I've not read Postman Rings Twice.
Yeah, might have to check that one out too. Because I have that film. Actually, I think it's in the same little. I have like one of the TCM um, Turner Classic Movies editions where they have like four movies in one thing, and I think it's Maltese Falcon, The Postman Always Rings Twice, Dial M for Murder,
That's good.
and I can't remember the fourth one that's on there, but yeah, good stuff. All right. Well, is there anything else, Shawn? I think we pretty much covered everything. We covered the book, we covered the film. Was there anything else that you wanted to share? Because obviously you have a lot more knowledge about the book than I do. But was there anything else you wanted to throw out there?
Yeah, well, I guess, well, maybe just a little bit about the and I'm no way an expert on this, because I'm interested in it, but I've never delved deeply in it. But like the hard boiled stuff started, yeah, in the 20s, and it was in fiction, and there was gangster films and detective films in the silent era. But as soon as the sort of the sound era, when 1930 comes along, when sound was fully entrenched, then they started doing detectives that were a little darker, and that's where the hard boiled detectives started getting into the films, and then and the film noir thing. That's the French for, term that I think in the mid 40s, and then they started looking at the American detective film. And there's also, and then they started make a lot of stuff, and a lot of the ones that started making the quintessential American film noir were European directors. They're the ones that sort of started. John Huston wasn't, but you got like William Dieterle, you've got Billy Wilder for uh, Double Indemnity, you've got Almer, oh, Edgar Almer, I think it is, G. Almer, who probably did the very first film noir. And it's weird. It's weird. It's a quintessential American film sort of genre, but it's European filmmakers were the ones that did it.
Interesting. Yeah. It's funny. I don't know. I don't hear anyone ever really talking about this film, but I'm trying to think. Yeah, this is it. I had to look it up. In a Lonely Place. Have you ever seen that one? That's another one with Bogey in it.
Yeah, I've got the film and I've got the book. It's one of the things I'm going to do, a book to film eventually.
Oh, really? Yeah, I'll definitely watch that because
Yeah,
that's one of my favorites. And I don't really, I don't really hear a lot of talk about that one, but I really love that film. I haven't read the book, but yeah, I'll have to check that out.
yeah. I've still got, like, people want me to start doing that again, and I've got maybe about 5 or 6 books that I can do. So I'm going to slowly do a few here or there, and I've got that one somewhere here. I think well, I've got the film up here because it's a BFI. I know that, and probably just above it or something is the book as well. So I tried to keep all the stuff. Otherwise, I'll lose it.
Yeah, I have two thoughts whenever I see you sitting there with all of your bookshelves. One is jealousy and one is fear that you are going to just one day, like, the books are just going to fall. They're just going to fall. There's just like no more room, Shawn, for any more books. But
There isn't, and I'm currently trying to create room to cull, and that's the
yeah.
thing. But I had a friend last year come in. Some friends, they had time and they moved stuff around. Where I used to know where stuff is, I may not have been able to get to it because it's in that pile. Now I don't know where.
Oh no.
because they moved everything. So I'm now starting through and saying I want to keep this one and get rid of this and so forth.
Yeah.
Slow process and very difficult.
Yes, for sure. Because there's always a reason to keep one.
Yeah.
Always a reason. And Mark says, I like the Petrified Forest.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one too.
I don't think I've ever come across that one. I'll have to look it up.
One of my favorite film noirs is I always forget the name of it. It's Orson Welles. It's one of his last sort of Hollywood films with Ben Hur. I can't even think of his name. Charlton Heston. It's 1959, I think it is, or whatever.
Touch of Evil.
Touch of Evil. Yeah, that's amazingly good as a film noir. But there's so many. There's so many. I've got Columbia. There's 4 sets here, I think, of Columbia noirs, and
Oh my
one
gosh.
of Bogey. And then they're starting a new series. This company, Universal Noir. I think there's about almost 800 films that are classed as noir, that are classed as film noir.
Wow.
Older ones, that is.
Yeah. Well, I have some films listed that I'm going to need to check out, a couple of books. And yeah, thank you so much, Shawn, for co-hosting this month with me. And yeah, I had a good time reading this book. Thank you for
I'm bad.
all the insight, because you were just full of all sorts of little cool stories about the actors and stuff. And yeah, really, really enjoyed it.
And I must apologize because I'm bad at sort of buddy reads with people. I've sort of realized because I don't read at the same time as everybody else. I didn't read this until what was it? Thursday evening. I didn't read it. I reread it until Thursday evening.
Yeah, no, it's quite all right. And anybody in the book club that I do can tell you, anybody who's in it can tell you I'm very low key. I mean, everybody has life to do, so you know, you read when you can. And yeah, it's supposed to be for fun. It's not supposed to be a job, Shawn. So no pressure there. You were not under any pressure, I hope, to get that done.
No, I wanted to do it because when you mentioned this, it was when we did the Desert Island books, I think, and I jumped at it, even though I just read it that year again, or last year. Like just any excuse to read it again is fine for me. But yeah, I don't know if I'm going to do next month or this month's one because
Yeah.
I do have 27 books on my list so far.
That is insane, Shawn. That's insane. But you know what? You'll probably crush it. You will do it, no problem, I'm sure.
Well, there's about 6 of them that are very short, so I might be able to get through those quickly. That only means 21. But what just as can I get a spoiler for what's in May? Do you know what book is
Oh
May?
gosh, what is in May? I forgot. I would have to look at the video I did myself to figure out what was in May. I don't know. Mark might know. He seems to be Johnny on the spot in the chat with us when we forget names and.
Well, he's probably there as soon as they start talking about something. He knows my COVID brain is not.
Look, he's helping us out again. My cousin Rachel.
Never heard of it.
Daphne du Maurier. So.
Oh yes, I do know it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I definitely will do that.
Oh no, Mark says, oh no, that's June, and his mom had to chime in and save him. It is The Half Sister. So this is like a thriller. It's a newer book by Sandy Jones. So.
Okay, I'll take a look at it, but definitely the Daphne du Maurier one. I do want to read more of hers.
So yeah, so yeah, that's I hadn't read My Cousin Rachel, and I really enjoyed Rebecca. So, and I'm sure, have you read that, Shawn?
Yeah, long time ago. I do have to reread Daphne du Maurier. It's a long time since I've read her, and Mark's been reading some in the short stories, and I remember liking the short stories as well. But as I say, there's a lot that I haven't read. I have not read my sister Rachel. I've read three, I think, novels, maybe three novels at the most, I think.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I know we have a nonfiction in July that's, I think it's close to shore. It's about the uh, great white shark attacks that inspired Jaws.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's a nonfiction story of that. So I figured that would be a great beach read. Going to be at the beach reading about shark attacks.
Do you have it? How far do you have it picked up? Because I'd love to do, if you do the Invention of Murder by Judith, is it Judith Flanders? Um, that about the invention of the English murder.
Well, you know what? I haven't done 2024 yet, and you might say this is way too far in advance, but can I go ahead and put you on tap for that one?
Definitely, because I do want to read it again.
Okay.
Because I read it twice already. Because it's so good. It's just a history. What it is a literally a history of the Penny Dreadfuls and the English obsession with murder stories, true life murder stories in newspapers, and what happened around that. And
Yeah.
it's fabulous.
Well, cool. Well, I guess we're getting close to kind of halfway through the year, so I should probably start thinking about 2024 anyway. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that on tap, Shawn, and we'll talk like what month
Another one you should
later.
do is Lodger, the Lodger by
The Lodger.
yeah, Landos or something. Well, Mark, I think, has just read it recently. That's really good.
All right, I've got
Uh,
all these tabs up now. Yeah, it's funny. I went to a bookstore yesterday and I saw several books, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this would be so great for Black Hearts Book Club." And I had to rein myself in because I walked out of there and I spent way too much money. But I did get a couple of books. I had to get a Kennedy book, of course, but I got a Kennedy book and a couple others. But yeah, definitely gonna start planning that out. And Mark, I do love the film The Birds, ironically enough. But the fear on that actress's face is real. It's real and it's legitimate because birds, they're evil in my opinion. But
I've never read the book. I never cared for the film too much. I do like Hitchcock, but the Lodger was his sort of breakthrough silent um, film based on the Mark. What's the title? I mean, what's the author? It's Laundus or something like that. Maria Belloc Laundus, I think.
Marie Adelaide Belloc Lowndes, is that it?
Yeah, yeah, that's it.
I probably did not pronounce that correctly, but
Yeah, that's it.
all right. So I guess that's it for Shawn. I
Okay.
appreciate you, and I can't wait for our next read. And yeah, had a good time. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.